I chose to do my Ignite project on the 7 strategies of assessment for learning, and I focused on the 3 main questions: where am I going, where am I now, and how can I close the gap? So then I went into formative assessment and what formative assessment is. It needs to be used immediately to make adjustments to form new learning, and it needs to happen during the learning. And I also found a quote about what formative assessment really is. Summative assessment is used to make a judgment about the level of competence or achievement. It's used to evaluate the learning, not to guide learning like formative assessment is, and it's meant to be used after learning. Strategy 1 is all about making those learning targets clear for students and being able to use those learning targets actively, making them in student-friendly language. And an important quote that really stuck with me is, "Targets on the wall are not targets in the head." The CABD learning objectives definitely focused on the condition, actor, behavior, and degree. You want to make sure to include those 4 things in every learning target, as well as making sure they're in kid-friendly language. Strategy number 2 is all about using examples and models of strong and weak work. You can use examples of strong and weak work in selective response items, written response items, and rubrics. Strategy 3 is about offering descriptive feedback. It needs to identify what was done correctly, and you need to give feedback regularly to students and be descriptive enough. Next step feedback identifies what they need to improve on and what they need to do next. The impact of feedback done well has several long-term effects, and it really helps to shape their attitudes towards learning and models students' identities as learners and how they view themselves. Some characteristics of effective feedback. What effective feedback looks like: it directs attention to the attended learning. It occurs during learning. It doesn't do the thinking for students. It requires them to think, and it provides students of what they can act on. Peer feedback is a form of feedback that you can use in the classroom. When you're using this, you definitely want to make sure to scaffold peer feedback. You want to model for students how to do this, and you might want to set up some peer response groups. Strategy 4 is about teaching students to self-assess and set goals for next steps. I listed some examples here of some self-assessment you can use. My favorite is the stare and stars. So you have them do a star for what they've done well and a stare for what they need to improve on. Goal setting is for students to need to focus on around these 3 questions for goal setting: where am I going, where am I now, and how can I close the gap? You also want to be specific of when and where to set that goal. Action planning can help improve understanding of learning targets students have not yet mastered. It can create a study plan, and it can use a goal setting frame. The goal and plan conference, I listed the steps here of what that would look like. You want to always start off by sharing the intended learning, helping them to create a goal, describing how they can reach that goal. You would definitely want to set a time of where and when they will accomplish that goal and how. Strategy 5 is about using that feedback loop of what happens next by starting off with the initial instruction, the student action, the teacher and student analysis, and going back to those things as needed. Types of learning needs are errors due to incomplete understanding, errors due to flaws in reasoning, and errors due to misconceptions. So the errors due to incomplete understanding is when they're not getting something completely. The flaws are what they're not getting. Strategy 6 is the feedback. Is the instruction followed by practice with feedback. If you also want to remember, if you grade too soon, it can harm learning and misrepresent their progress. Strategy 7 is the chance to track and reflect on and share their learning progress. You want to give students a chance to track their learning and to reflect on their learning to make sure that they're making growth. You want to make sure to never compare students' progress with other students. Here's some ways to share students' learning. You can have students share by writing to others and to participate in conferences. My plan of implementation, I plan to implement what I've learned from this class by incorporating these 7 strategies into my classroom and be able to give my students clear learning targets at the beginning of every lesson. Thank you so much for watching.